Let's wrap up our Python refresher with an example. Along the way, we'll be introducing control flow, which lets some code execute while others do not, or that runs code again and again, taking command line arguments and how to read files. This will also give you clues about how to go about developing programs. So let's write a program that counts the number of lines in a file and counts the lines that don't start with a pound symbol, variously called a pound sign or an octothorpe. In Python, you can create comments with the pound symbol, which means the lines won't be treated as code. It's useful for documentation or something like that. So in other words, this is a program that counts the number of lines of real code in a Python file. I like writing my programs in an application called Emacs. To edit the file, you type in the name of Emacs and then the name of the file you want to edit. You can obviously use whatever you want. Many people like Microsoft Visual Studio Code or Sublime for editing Python. Let's first get the skeleton of our code together. This allows you to take the name of the file you want to count as input so that we can count many different files in the future. We again use a package called obsile to help you out. If it's missing, make sure that you install it with pip like we did before. We say that we're going to use one command argument called file that's a string. When we run the code as is, it just prints the name of the file. Now let's peek at the contents of the file. For that, we're going to need a loop. A loop goes over a list and does something for each of the elements. Technically, in Python speak, this is called an iterable. Let's create a list that might look like a file that we're counting. For each element in the list is a string separated by a comma. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The for command says that we'll go through each of the elements in the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The variable line will take on the value of each of the elements in the list one by one. For now, let's just print these out. We save the file, run it, and see all the lines in the list that's standing in for our file. So far, so good. But we're ignoring the name of the file. So let's make a function that will iterate through all of the lines in an actual file. This perhaps isn't the best way to do this, but we'll show off the yield keyword. This function takes the name of the file, opens it up, and yields each of the lines in the file. Unlike a return statement, which can only be used once, the yield statement can be used many times. It will now be the value that gets assigned to the variable line in the for loop. To open a file, we use the open command. This takes the name of the file, and we can iterate through the file using the readLines function. It itself is an iterator. So let's run the program again. Exit out of Emacs, call the program again. Now we print out all the lines of the program, so the data is getting in without an issue. Now, as we go through the lines of the file, we'll want to count the lines and then check whether a line starts with a comment or not. And remember, a line that's a comment starts with a pound sign. To count, we'll create two new integer variables, code lines and comment lines, and set both equal to 0. They should increment or be one bigger every time we go through a line of code that matches either comment or code. Then we'll print a message at the end of the program that says we found this many lines of code and this many lines of comments. Again, let's run the program. Okay, it spits out a number, which is just the number of lines in the file. It isn't actually looking at the content of the code, but it is counting something. Okay, so now we need to check whether a line starts with a comment or not. To check, we need to use an if statement. An if statement is structured in multiple parts. The first part of the if statement checks whether something is true or not. What comes after the if statement is a Boolean data type. In this case, the function starts with returns true if a string starts with a particular character and false otherwise. Typically, you structure an if statement into two paths. You do something if the test is true, but something else if the test is false. In our case, we want to increment the count of code if there is no pound symbol, and increment the number of comment lines if there is. Let's go over that again. We test at the beginning of an if statement, One branch executes if the test is true. In this case, there is a pound sign at the start of the line. Another branch executes if it isn't. The branch that does execute if it's true comes right after the if statement. The other one after the else. We can write more complicated if statements using an else if, which tests whether other conditions other than the first test was false. Here's an example of that that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, but let's go back to our example program trying to count code and comment lines. So let's run the code again, exit out of Emacs, run Python again. Now we get the right answer, counting up the number of comments and code lines. So let's review the code one last time. An argument comes into the program from the command line. That becomes an argument to the function. That is an iterator through the yield command that we talked about before. The iterator is accessed through a for loop, which is assigned every time the variable line, which is tested in the if statement, which increments a correct variable whether or not the hash sign or the hash symbol, pound sign, whatever you want to call it, is there. And at the very end, we print out the right answer. Now at this point, you might rightly point out that we just created an iterator to call another iterator. Fair enough, it doesn't make much sense beyond showing off how to create your own iterators. But this structure would make more sense if we were doing things like removing leading white space from the lines or something like that. Whew! So this concludes our whirlwind tour of Python programming. Hopefully this refreshed your memory of Python, helped show you how Python relates to a programming language that you're already familiar with, or what you need to learn to get through the class. Again, this course is not a programming course per se. We'll mostly be using tools other people write. We'll implement very simple algorithms and glue together data and tools. And we'll need a little bit of programming, specifically in Python, to do that. And I'm here to help you get through it. So if you need more pointers, make sure to post in Piazza if you're unclear on anything. We've also linked to Python tutorials in the reading material for this week. Now that we're done with the programming review, we'll next move on to the math review. If you want to see more videos like this, check the video description for the course that comes from the link down below. You can then see the context and the correct order for watching these videos. YouTube will gleefully show you stuff in the wrong order. If you want other people to see this video, provide a big gradient to the recommendation algorithm by clicking the like and subscribe button down below.